Hey guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and I'm pretty excited to bring you the new iPhone 6 and the 6 Plus. This is the new premium iPhone, which is $100 more than the more mainstream iPhone 6. Of course, we have a larger display here on both sizes, 4.7 inches and 5.5 inches. Of course, the old iPhone, the 5S, was 4 inches. This is a huge leap in capacity. So like I said, the 6 Plus is kind of a premium model. It's $100 more than the more mainstream iPhone 6, so this can get quite expensive. 128 gig version is $1,000 off contract. It's again available in 3 colors, the same colors from the iPhone 5S. We have silver, gold, and space gray. I have the space gray versions, which we're going to take a look at in this video. Now, before we get to the specifics, let's get to the unboxing. And the boxes themselves are kind of interesting. They're very simple, just plain white boxes. They're kind of anonymous. You can't tell what color you have or what version of iOS is running on the devices. All of that is in fine print on the back. So let's start off with the iPhone 6. So we're just going to cut the plastic here. All right, so let's go ahead and lift the lid. And there we go. Space gray with the black front panel. Let's go ahead and lift that tab. Very nice, very lightweight and very thin. This is 6.9 millimeters thin, while the iPhone 6 Plus is 7.1 millimeters thin. All right, so let's go ahead and peel off the plastic on the back here. A little different packaging this time. Peels off on the front. There we go. Now, before we take a close look at that, let's just clear the contents here. So as you can see here, we have this little tray, and what I think is funny is that they have this little cutout here for the camera module, which kind of sticks out on the new iPhone. So inside we'll find our literature packet here. So if we pull this out, it's just a little envelope. Now the paperwork is pretty basic here. Just a quick start guide with basic information. We have our regulatory information and, of course, pretty large Apple stickers. Now what you're not seeing here on the US version is a SIM ejection tool, which is more common globally. And of course on the inside we have our standard Apple charger, travel charger. We also have a set of earpods with a carrying case. And then we have our Lightning to USB cable. Now our next stop is the iPhone 6 Plus. Let's go ahead and crack into this as well. All right, so let's go ahead and lift this lid. All right, so there is our very large iPhone 6 Plus, which is actually quite nice. I'm pretty familiar with large phones. I actually love large phones in the Android universe, so it's really nice to finally have that in the Apple universe. It's actually not too bad in terms of its weight. So let's go ahead and peel off the plastic here. Now, at first glance, I'm really happy with the size and feel of this phone. It has this nice, cool, solid metal feel. This continuous surface, as Apple describes it, with this seamless construction, feels like one piece of metal and glass, and it's pretty lightweight and very thin, only 7.1 millimeters thin, slightly thicker than the 6.9 on the iPhone 6, and certainly thinner than the 7.6 millimeters on the iPhone 5S. But overall, this definitely feels like a great phone in the hand. I'm definitely a big fan of large handsets, and I think Apple has done a really nice job here. Now, before we take a closer look at both phones, again, let's get through the accessories. Once again, we have that tray with that little cutout for the camera module that sticks out. We also have our paperwork here. So again, it's just an envelope, and because this is the US version locked to a carrier, we do not have a SIM ejection tool because it does already come with a SIM inside. So again, iPhone 6 Plus, this is just a quick start guide. Very simple this time. iPhone 6 regulatory information. And of course, we get a set of Apple stickers, which are actually the same size as the ones in the iPhone 6. Now, the iPhone 6 Plus accessories are identical to the ones found on the iPhone 6, so you do not get a more powerful battery charger for the 6 Plus, even though the 6 Plus has a considerably larger battery at almost 3,000 milliamp hours. All right, so let's go ahead and boot these up for the first time and get them set up so we can start taking a look around. All right, so let's take a look at our phone. So we have the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus, 4.7 inches, 5.5 inches. These are both Retina HD displays. So on the iPhone 6, we have a 1334 by 750 display. That's 326 pixels per inch. That's identical to the iPhone 4, 4S, 5, and 5S, same pixel density, but higher resolution. Now, they call these Retina HD because they have HD resolutions, but on the iPhone 6, it's actually 750p versus 720p, and the iPhone 6 Plus is a full 1080p, so 1920 by 1080. That's good for 401 pixels per inch. That is the highest resolution display that Apple makes right now. Now, Apple is using dual domain IPS displays here, which means these have much better off-axis viewing than last year's iPhone 5S. We also have photo alignment for a higher quality display in terms of the assembly process. The display assembly is also much thinner. Now, with all this technology, these displays are color accurate following the sRGB standards. So taking a look at the design of the phone, you can see we have a stainless steel Apple logo. This is different from last year's iPhone 5S, which had a polished Apple logo, so this is actually a separate component. Of course, it's color matched depending on what phone you get. You also have these controversial antenna insulators or separators at the top and bottom. They are color keyed to the phone, so the space gray has a dark gray color, the silver color is more of a light gray color, and then the gold version actually has a pure white color. Now on the back we have our new 8 megapixel camera, same resolution, but the sensor is all new with 1.5 micron pixels instead of 1.2, so it should deliver better low light performance. Now as you can see here, the camera modules do protrude here, unlike the iPhone 5S, but they are covered with sapphire glass, so they're pretty scratch resistant. Now as you can see here, the iPhone 6 Plus camera module looks a little larger, and that's because the module itself actually moves around in response to the motion of your hand by using the gyroscope built into the phone. We also have a new True Tone flash, which is now more compact this time. So we have a circular design instead of what they were doing last year with the iPhone 5S. And of course, right next to that, we have our microphones. Now located up here is the NFC chip for Apple Pay. Now right now this is restricted to the Apple Pay feature. Now on the left hand side in the same position on both the 6 and 6 Plus are the volume controls. They're also the same size. You can see the redesigned from the circular design from the iPhone 5S. You can also see we have our mute switch here, which is quite a bit thinner than the one on the 5 and 5S. So along the bottom, of course, we have our lightning connector. On either side of that lightning connector are the pentalobular screws that hold the device together. We also have our speaker grill. You can see it is larger on the iPhone 6 Plus, which makes for a louder speaker. We also have our headphone jack, simpler design from the iPhone 5 and 5S, which had a little ring around it, a little metal ring. This is it looks like plastic or something like that. And then we also have our microphone. Again, a simpler design from the iPhone 5 and 5S. Possibly because there really wasn't much surface area in here that actually was needed for the microphone. It was just decorative. So now we have a more, I guess, honest design in terms of how much space the microphone is actually taking up. Now along the right side, you'll find the repositioned sleep-wake power button, which has been moved from the top to the right side. The interesting thing here, however, is that the power button is not lower on the iPhone 6 Plus, despite its taller size. So that's kind of interesting. We also have our SIM tray, which seems to be a slightly lower position here on the iPhone 6 Plus than the iPhone 6. Now toward the top, you'll find the earpiece, and it's a bit larger on the iPhone 6 Plus. Right next to it, you'll find the all-new 1.2 megapixel Facetime HD camera, which is good for 720p HD video. Now right above the earpiece, you'll find the infrared proximity sensor, as well as an ambient light sensor right next to it on the left. And once again, the home button incorporates Touch ID, which uses a sapphire crystal lens over a sensor, which reads your fingerprint. They do prompt you to set this up when you set the phone for the first time, and I've been using Touch ID on the iPhone 5S, and it works excellent. Now the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus also feature something called reachability. So you just double tap the home button, double tap, not double press, to bring everything down to a thumb reachable area of the screen here. So you can see it comes down a little farther on the iPhone 6 Plus than the iPhone 6. And as you can see here, it does time out, so if you let it go, it'll just snap back. Of course, this also works in apps. Again, just double tap and you can reach the search bar. Of course, when you act on it, it does snap it back in place, so you have to tap again to regain access. Now, also unique to the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus is a setting panel under display and brightness, which allows you to change your display zoom. So you can set this up when you set up the device for the first time. It prompts you to select whether you want the standard view or the zoomed view. So the zoom view basically magnifies the icons and fills up the home screen, but you can also go to standard view, which I prefer, which is the native size for this display. Now with this larger display, you also see we have 6 rows of apps instead of 5 from the 5S and 4 from the 4 and 4S. Now the iPhone 6 Plus also adds landscape view, which the iPhone 6 does not do. Now apps can also be optimized for the size of the iPhone 6 Plus. So for example, Apple has optimized the Messages app to give you a little more information on the display than the standard iPhone 6. Now this is particularly useful for apps like email. So for example, in the iPhone 6 Plus, I can see the body of the text right here versus the iPhone 6, which basically means I have to tap on the email and go back to see the rest of the messages. Now the iPhone 6 Plus takes advantage of that screen size with a new keyboard. So as you can see in landscape orientation, again, this is unique to the 6 Plus, you get some additional controls here. So for example, we can select all here. So we have cut, copy, paste, as well as bold. So we can bold our text, we can cut it, paste it, etc. Alright, so let's take a look at the camera app. So once again, we have an 8 megapixel camera, but this time it's all new with 1.5 micron pixels instead of 1.2. So better low light performance. This camera also features something called Focus Pixels. Focus Pixels allows the camera to use phase detection and autofocus for twice as fast autofocus from the iPhone 5S. This works in both photo and video. So while recording video, focus is so quick and smooth that it's barely noticeable. It works really well. So when you're taking a photograph here, let's just slide to the photograph mode here. Just tap anywhere on the scene, focus it for you. It's pretty quick here. So again, it's pretty responsive. You can tap anywhere on the scene. Now a feature with iOS 8 here is this little exposure controller that appears next to the focus target. So you can manually adjust your exposure or allow the device to do it for you. Snap your photograph. You can also tap and hold for a burst shot. You can see it's pretty quick, just like on the iPhone 5S. Also unique to the iPhone 6 is the enhanced Slo-Mo Mode. So we have 240 frames per second in addition to 120 frames per second. The 5S launched with just 120 frames per second. So with 240, you can get even slower, smoother video in slow motion. Now we also have a new Panorama mode, which can now take 43 megapixel panoramas with the aid of the new gyroscope, as well as the new image processor built into the A8 chip. Now we do have a new and improved front-facing camera. Again, still 1.2 megapixels, still 720p HD video, but an all-new sensor. So it allows 81% more light in, also new aperture, f2.2. As you can see here, we also have burst selfies. So you can basically tap and hold the shutter release to take a bunch of images here, and then you can pick the best one you want. So as you can see here, it's automatically selected the best image, but you can manually select that yourself. So for example, I'm not sure which one is best. I don't think any of them are, but let's go with that one. And then you have the option to keep everything or keep only the one favorite. Let's go with that. Now this Facetime HD camera also features auto HDR in both photo and video. And when you're recording video, you can also snap some photographs with this little icon down here. Alrighty guys, once again, this is Mike, the Detroit boy, testing out the front-facing or Facetime HD camera, which again is only good for 720p video, but it does a pretty decent job. You can see it does a nice job exposing the scene. Again, it's using auto HDR for both video and photo, and the results are pretty good, and the microphone pickup is also one of the best on any phone. Now, both the iPhone 6 are using the new A8 processor, which is succeeding the A7 in the iPhone 5S, but both still have only 1 gig of RAM. But you can see the clock speed here, 1.3 gigs versus almost 1.4 gigs on the iPhone 6. So let's go ahead and run our benchmarks to see how they differ. So pretty impressive results here, almost 3,000 on the multi-core score and a little over 1,600 on the single-core score. Now, they did say that the A8 will perform about 25 or up to 25% faster than the A7, and the graphics performance is up to 50% faster than the A7, and that seems to be pretty consistent with what we're seeing here. Now, there is a big design difference between the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 5S. The iPhone 5S had a more angular design with those polished chamfered edges. The new phones feel really nice in the hand with that continuous smooth surface. Now, the other unique design attribute here is the cover glass, which has a curved edge, which again merges with the shape of the metal body. Again, it feels like one continuous surface. So when you swipe in from the edges, it feels really natural. It feels really nice. We've seen this with some other Windows phones, specifically Nokia phones, so maybe this isn't a big innovation, but Apple's done a really nice job creating a seamless design. Now, Apple says the cover glass is ion strengthened glass. It's not sapphire glass. Now, in terms of size, the iPhone 6 is definitely the mainstream phone. If you're used to using the iPhone 5 and 5S, I don't think there's any issue with the iPhone 6. It's a much thinner design, rounded, more comfortable to handle, and I think anybody can get used to it. To me, it still feels small because I'm used to using much larger Android phones, usually around 5.5 inches, like the iPhone 6 Plus. Now, personally, I love the size of the iPhone 6 Plus. I think 5.5 inches is perfect. I have pretty large hands, so it's nice to have a display with a larger keyboard, with a lot more screen real estate for content and for interacting with the display. And I can comfortably use this with one hand. I've been using 5.5-inch Android phones for months now, like the LG G3 and the OnePlus One, and love those. The only difference with those devices, however, is that they're more compact overall. They're not as tall as the iPhone 6 Plus, but the 6 Plus is much thinner, more rounded, and lighter, and feels a lot more comfortable to handle than those phones, even though the device overall is quite a bit bigger. Now, besides the full 1080p display and optical image stabilization, perhaps the biggest reason to consider the iPhone 6 Plus over the iPhone 6 is the battery. This is a 3000 milliamp hour battery, which is estimated to deliver considerably better performance than the iPhone 6 or the iPhone 5S. So if you need battery life, the iPhone 6 Plus is probably the one you're going to want. But of course, that's going to have to wait for my full review. Alrighty guys, so now the final question is, which phone do you want to get, the iPhone 6 or the 6 Plus? Please let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again in the next one.
Hey Chloe.